Farm Small, Farm Smart Daily is part of the Modern Grower Podcast Network. Check out some of our other shows like Carrot Cash Flow, the Growing Microgreens Podcast, and Farm Small, Farm Smart. Learn more about the shows using the link below. Different systems, more crops, more carbon into the ground, and that's been another big focus of yours, is focusing on carbon sequestration through agriculture. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people, I don't want to say they even take it for granted. They're just not even thinking about it as a yield from a crop. Like, it's always measured by what I harvest. You're not measuring really the residue that you leave on the ground or the carbon that you put in the ground. But given the work that you've done in this, how do you view agriculture as a tool to sink carbon into the ground?
I think it has such a massive potential. And if you would have asked me that question 4 years ago, I probably wouldn't have really had much of an answer for you. But shortly after I started on doing this work with Buzz, he sat down and we have these multiple years and hundreds of soil samples worth of data from all these different projects that we clumped together. And we're like, what can we find from this? And one thing that stood out like a spotlight when we started looking at it was the organic matter levels. And so we have about 500 sites that we've looked at that and started measuring soil, like standard soil tests and organic matter, from the point that these guys started implementing multi-species cover crops on their land. And so we broke it down into sites that had been under cover crops for 2 years, another group for 3 years, and another group for 4 years. So we could see what that transition into cover cropping looked like. And when we looked at the soil organic matter levels, even in sandy soils in South Carolina, where a lot of people think that you cannot build the organic matter, we saw like really significant increases across the board in soil organic matter just from using cover crops. Some of these sites were tilled, some were no-till. The other management practices were highly variable, but they all had just started cover cropping at the time that we started sampling. And so seeing those numbers all go up was really exciting. And in the paper I wrote about it, I very loosely calculated that into what does that mean as far as the amount of carbon that's coming, that those cover crops are pulling out of the atmosphere and putting into the soil, and kind of what does that look like for the state of South Carolina. And we had numbers of pounds per acre per year of organic matter change range from 730 pounds per acre per year to 2,700 pounds per acre per year in the 4-year-long study. And that kind of calculates loosely to 400 to 1,500 pounds of carbon per acre per year that were moved from the atmosphere and put back into the soil through those plant root exudates and the plant material and the cover crop breaking down and going back into the soil. And so based on the census data of 1.9 million acres of farmland in the state, I just used that vague number to calculate if all that farmland had started cover cropping, how would and we used our kind of average numbers that we saw just from our 500 samples. So you definitely can't extrapolate that out accurately to the whole state. But if these numbers are loosely correct, we would be looking at an average farm size in South Carolina is 197 acres. We would be looking at 50 to 156 tons of carbon per year moved from the atmosphere to the soil. Tons. And statewide, that would be 500,000 to 1.5 million tons back into the soil from the atmosphere, just from putting cover crops in.
It's pretty remarkable when you think about it it's a free lunch, right? Because you're getting all the benefits that you
want. Of a cover crop.
Yeah, exactly. For the cash crops that you want to grow later on. If you think about that, is there a point where things start to slow down in terms of banking that carbon? In other words, can the soil only hold so much? And isn't the whole point of putting organic matter into the soil to use it to stimulate biology for the crops that you want to grow? In theory, we can't grow organic matter infinitely in the soil.
No.
So does it hit an upper limit? Because at a certain point, like that, you want to trade that organic matter that you're putting into the soil for nutrients that the crops can use? Whereas then it just caught in the cycle. It's being used, but then it's being put right back into the ground. So it's trapped in that system.
And you can always have the goal of trying to put more in than you take out to foster that biologically healthy soil and that cycling of nutrients. But every soil type is going to have its capability to hold what it can hold. Like you're not going to be able to necessarily change that type of soil or change what it is. Sandier soil is not going to be able to hold or have as much organic matter content as something that's loamy. It's just the kind of the physical nature of the soil is still going to limit what it can be, or that's going to, I don't want to say define what it is, but really limit what you can do. But at least from my opinion, I don't think there's any wrong you can do by constantly trying to improve those organic matter levels, especially if you're cropping or grazing. You've got to remember that you are constantly taking out every single year as well. And that's what we've done for decades, is just take and take and take. And so maybe we've got decades of work to do to put it back in and put it back in and put it back in. Like in these 4 or 5 years that we've been doing this, we haven't seen that limit happen. We haven't seen things stop improving. And now, granted, if you're looking at the soil organic matter tests, where these improved from, say, 2% to 2.2%, which is still a 10% overall increase in your organic matter content. So that's hugely significant, but we're not jumping from like 1% to 5%. But all of these, because it's in a percent, it seems like it's such a small increase. You've only increased by 0.2, but that's 400 pounds an acre of carbon.
Hey there, guess what? If you're a farmer, you can have your low tunnels paid for by the NRCS. They have this cool new program where farmers can get $4 to $5 for each square foot to help with a Quick Hoops low tunnel system, frames and fabric included. It's like free money to help you grow more stuff on your farm. Want to learn more about Quick Hoops and the NRCS program? Click on the link below.